Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy. And Joe Biden audio leaks from the FBI.
Yes.
Yes.
I never understand when you try to read the headlines at the beginning, but
Well,
yeah.
my other show, I think it works better because I read the three major headlines and then introduce myself.
Okay.
But you like it this way, so we'll continue to do it your way.
Thank you. My way works. It's better to have like banter and rambling before we get into it.
That's what you say, but sometimes I watch your own old videos and I'm like, man, I'm glad I stepped up as the producer because now we actually have a show.
Oh, now you're the producer. Okay.
Well, I'm definitely not the talent.
Neither am I, so.
Yeah, you are.
Maybe it's our dog.
Okay. Let's go into the first thing. And if anybody tuned into my morning show, it's a lot of the same articles tonight.
Yes.
But we're going to have kind of more fleshed out takes on them.
With me.
So cash-strapped Hollywood turns to Qatar or Qatar.
No, it is Qatar. I had a student that would always correct me. So cash-strapped Hollywood could turn to Qatar, which is making moves at Cannes. So apparently the Qataris are in Cannes trying to buy up movies.
Yeah.
It says Qatar, whatever it's called, the tiny Arab state rich in oil and gas that recently offered to replace Donald Trump's Air Force One with a 400 million jet likened to a palace in the sky, is at Cannes signaling its ambitions to take its nation film and TV business to the next level. The Qatar Film Committee, an official body that is part of the Media City Qatar hub and is tasked with driving growth.
That's good. So basically, Qatar has enough money to go into all these film festivals and buy up all the movies. Right now, typically, streaming services go into these film festivals like the Cannes Film Festival or Sundance, and one company sometimes buys up everything. Sometimes they get into bidding wars for certain movies, but if you're in these film festivals, you can bank on the fact that the movie's going to be bought up by a streaming service. Now, when you have a big player like Qatar coming in here, they have the ability to go to every single film festival, buy up all the assets, and just put them on a new streaming service, or buy an already established streaming service and make it great. So,
and I mean, hopefully we won't see Qatar buying stuff like Emilia Perez, because that was one that Netflix bought at Cannes two years ago or last year, and then blasted it everywhere.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting what happens because I'm wondering if they're going to make new content or they're going to buy up old content, because a lot of the independent films that will be coming out over the next 2 years are going to be extremely woke. It's going to be a big delay. The major film studios are able to kind of pivot, write it out, edit it out. With independent films, you have to understand how this works. This all came from government financing, government grants. So basically, you apply for your movie grants and they give you $100,000, $1 million to make the movie, but it has to meet certain criteria. For DEI, it has to meet certain criteria as far as wokeness goes, basically. They want to make sure different grants were given out for different reasons, but it's always woke propaganda, and they don't have the same ability to edit it out, so they're just going to have to release it, and these film festivals are going to continue to stay woke for a while.
And I've talked about it quite a few times, how, for example, with the Oscars, they have all of these parameters of how many women had to be involved and also in front of the camera, how many LGBTQ, alphabet community people, and we would also see it reflected within the film industry when we were in it, of how like requirements were kind of out in the open about who they were more willing to hire than who they were more willing to let go of.
Yeah, Qatar is going to be a major player. Like when Saudi Arabia went into boxing, they now own the boxing realm. They lose hand over fist money, but they're established as the new capital of boxing. Qatar has enough money to do the same with film, and with everybody fleeing Hollywood, if Qatar is willing to give enough tax credits, movie companies will go over to Qatar to film, or they'll go over wherever Qatar is going to tell them to film.
And it'll be interesting to see how their whole modesty clauses work around all of that as well. So maybe we'll stop seeing so many buts.
I don't know. I think they're just going to buy up content from film festivals, really. That's my guess.
Would they be willing to buy like these artsy ones?
Without a doubt.
Okay,
let's go into the next story. The next story is Disney. You talked a little bit about this, and so did I.
Yeah, and we have very different opinions on this.
So we both have different shows. So I have one in the morning on this channel at 12 p.m. Central Time. And you have one on our other channel called Nat and the Guy Espanol.
En Español.
Just before this show.
Yes.
Comes on at 8 p.m. Central Time.
Yes. So Disney Epic Games using AI to bring James Earl Jones' Darth Vader voice to Fortnite. Fortnite players will be able to chat with Darth Vader in a move made in close consultation with Jones's family.
So it's nice they consulted the family. Disney must own the rights to James Earl Jones's voice. They're probably paying the family. But you have a different opinion than I do.
Yes.
I don't mind them using his voice. I would have just liked to see it in a much more classy way with the movies and really returning the movies to what they used to be rather than the garbage that they are today. And they could have done that off the back of James Earl Jones and some of the more classic actors in the original. They're choosing to do it in Fortnite, which is trying to appeal to a new generation. The new generation isn't invested in Star Wars like the original generation.
Because they ruined it.
Yeah.
For me, it's more about the legacy and respecting the work and the effort and the success that the original actors or actor in this case had, be it with their voice, their face, etc., and to try to dig up graves to just make more profit because you know that you're still relying on like really old properties and really old like nostalgia essentially is just kind of gross to me. And doing it through like it's not yes, he signed. Read an article in the Spanish Live where they were saying he did sign over some of the rights to his voice, etc., before he passed. But still, like I think you'll never be able to represent it as he would have when he was alive. So it's just kind of gross.
I don't think so.
Yes.
And I also think that they have these 60 George Lucas scripts sitting in the wings that are very adult oriented, very fleshed out scripts where he paid professional script writers a lot of money. These are $1 million scripts Disney refuses to shoot. It's rumored it would cost about $40 million an episode minimum to shoot these things. I would think more like 80, but we're in the realm where studios are willing to pay that now, especially if it can rebirth the Star Wars franchise. It's completely in the gutter right now, so this is an opportunity.
You're really hoping someone at Disney listens to you because you keep bringing that up.
I'm not the only one saying it.
I know.
Everybody that actually wants the best for Star Wars is saying it. WDW Pro, Culture Casino, you name it.
So maybe someone will finally listen to all of you. But you said you didn't even like Star Wars.
I don't.
Oh.
But the original wasn't bad.
I do like it.
The original wasn't bad, but I wasn't a big proponent like in the fandom or anything.
I wasn't in the fandom, but I like the prequels, funnily enough, because they came out when I was younger, and I actually like the political aspects of it more. I find the original ones a little boring, but because the prequels came out during my generation, I kind of like them.
It's funny that
most people don't like them.
It's funny you're not in the Star Wars fandom, but you're definitely in the Pokemon fandom.
Just because I know who Charizard is.
I don't know who any of these things are. Are you correcting me?
I think everybody in the world knows who that is.
Well, I didn't know who it was. I made some joke the other day about a Pokemon, and then she corrected me and gave me the right names, which is...
It's Charizard. Now I don't... Charmander is a little cute one.
You look like Charmander.
That's all I know. Yeah, it's because he was saying something like that, and then I said, it's the other one.
Okay, let's go into Final Destination Bloodlines.
Don't care. Oh, hold on.
And we watched this just before we went on the air here. Because I still hadn't had a chance to watch it, and I grabbed the headlines because this movie is doing a lot better than people expected.
The trailer we watched, not the movie.
Yeah, the trailer. Oh, no, the movie itself is doing better.
No, I know, but we watched the trailer.
Oh, yeah, we watched the trailer.
So Warner Brothers Horror Rules Final Destination Bloodlines stabs 43 million, Sinners Still Holy with 15 million, Fifth Frame, box office. So apparently, and there was an update, actually. So
I thought this was owned by Lionsgate Studios. But I guess
Warner Bros. New Line.
Yeah.
New Line. Who says two horror films can live in the same space? Warner Brothers. New Line's Final Destination Bloodlines is seeing a 20 million Friday, including last night's 5.5 million in previews, for a 43 million three-day gross at 3,523 theaters. This is in the U.S. As we told you previously, that would be the best opening ever for a Final Destination movie.
Yeah, and the Final Destinations have kind of become almost like a TV series, one every year, or just this thing that's one every year, kind of like what Saw. It was kind of played out. This one's a little bit different. They put a lot more effort into this. Which camera am I looking at?
Yours.
Oh, mine. Okay. They put a lot more effort into this one. The director actually let one of the main actors that's been in a lot of the Final Destinations write himself out. I also need to learn to slow down when I talk because I was watching myself earlier,
and you have to.
And I'm still doing it.
And you have to stop saying things like that. maybe we can all help you.
Continue to give your analysis of Bloodlines here.
Well, I think all of these like horror movies and also, for example, Top Gun Maverick. Thank you to Walker, who reminded us all of the name, because we kept saying Top Gun 2 or the latest one, and Mission Impossible, which I talked at length about in Spanish. I think all of these movies that don't have these like convoluted narratives and don't have as much ideology or wokeness or whatever you want to call it, forced inclusion in them, are going to be doing good at the box office because everybody else is tired of watching the same exact thing over and over again with zero creativity, completed with like wall-to-wall or blue screens where everything's done with CGI. So, and I mean, yes, Final Destination Bloodlines, is it called? Yes. We'll have we'll have a lot of CGI, of course, but at least it's like entertaining and you're watching people, pass away in interesting ways, and it's kind of like I don't know, it completely disconnects you from reality. And then even with Sinners, like I wouldn't consider that like forced inclusion because they're doing it in an like actual original way with purpose. Yep. And it has to do with the story, and they're not just forcing inclusion or diversity. And that's why it's also doing really well, because it's giving a story that's different to the ones people are used to. And it's also horror, so it kind of takes you completely out, because at least for most people, horror films and like scary films help them to disconnect, because some part of them is thinking maybe it could happen and some part is thinking it would never happen, but it tricks your brain into kind of relaxing in a sense by being so tense.
Well, and for theaters, horror movies are good for theaters because they're good date movies and stuff like that. That being said, this series has kind of become a straight to streaming kind of series. At least that's what it feels like. But with this new Final Destination's Bloodline, it actually looks a lot better than the previous ones. So it is doing well. That means the audience is kind of spoken, and I may watch it. So I'll probably watch it when it comes on streaming, though, because we are going to Mission Impossible tomorrow.
And Lilo and Stitch, so we can do the reviews for those. Because it'll be interesting to see if they actually manage with those two films, maybe this one, if we eventually watch it, to remove at least most of the things that people have been sick and tired of and just do a good movie once again.
Yeah, and I think they will. I have a feeling. Mm-hmm. Okay, and I think Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible and the last few movies that have come out over these past few weekends is really transitioning into mainstream audiences again and away from putting politics into movies, which is a good thing.
And some of them probably had to take all that out, like after it was shot and after it was already planned to be in there.
Okay, what do we have next? Canada's new housing minister.
Yeah. Oh no, that's.
And I showed him a few days ago when he first got nominated. And this used to be the mayor of BC. The mayor of Vancouver. He used to come to my bar, and he used to come into some other different organizations as well. Yeah. He's a complete goofball, but the way they're looking at housing in the country is completely the wrong way. They were elected by boomers, so they're very aware of that, and they're playing to the boomers in case there is a snap election or something like that comes up. What do I mean by that? Rather than lowering housing prices, an average one-bedroom apartment in Canada, in like Vancouver or Toronto, can cost upwards of $1 million, which is absolutely insane.
Yes. And
they need to lower house prices by building new houses. He's talking about how they're going to maintain the house prices and then build new houses. So,
and they've been on the verge of a bubble for a long time.
Yeah, but Carney has had this plan. He works with, what's his company's name?
Brookfield?
Yeah, Brookfield Management Assets. They're investing in these pod homes that I think they want to build massive low-budget pod homes for individuals, put them in there and have the Canadian government become renters and keep house prices high. So I think that's the plan. And let's just listen to this because this is insane. It's almost $1 million for a one-bedroom apartment in Canada. This is not sustainable. Nobody that's young has the future dream of owning a home anymore.
No.
And
that's one of the reasons we left.
Yeah, and even if it's passed down, they can't afford the taxes on it.
Yeah.
We want to increase the supply, but people have so much of their savings and their retirement. The home is their biggest asset, and that's what they're relying on. So how do you increase supply and make housing more affordable without ruining the retirement plans of people who have homes that they want to eventually cash out on? How do you thread that needle as minister?
Yeah, it's that is a challenging piece there, and that's where we're looking at several different aspects of the housing market. Market housing obviously is driven by market prices. and people that own housing or own buildings, they're riding on that market price. We have to make sure that we are building below market housing at a scale that makes sure we don't have people sleeping in the streets, that our young people can access the housing market. We've got new tools coming in terms of first-time home buyers not paying up to $1 million, getting $50,000 off. And that amount, if you're going up to $1.5 million in the more expensive markets. So we've got to create some incentives and opportunities for people to get into the market. We got to make sure that people's assets are obviously protected, and that's the market housing. But a big focus now on affordable housing and making sure there's entries into that, and the supply is keeping up with the demand.
When they're talking about affordable
It just
housing
looks
here,
like he's going in circles.
when they're talking about affordable housing here, what he's talking about is the government building and owning these new affordable houses and putting people into it, and that home ownership will become a thing of the past within Canada. If you don't own a home at this point, you're not going to, and even if house prices fall through the ground, the economy's going to fall through with it, so nobody's going to be able to afford those homes.
And he just seemed like he was going around in circles.
There needs to be a major crash, like when there was the housing crash in the United States, that helped keep house prices at least reasonable. In Canada, they never had that crash because the banks were insulated from bad mortgages and things like that. So house prices are extremely, extremely high. It's one of the highest places in the world to buy property and things like that. And it's crazy because they have more land than any other country.
Yes. Although most of that is frozen, but cold.
People still live in Edmonton and in the north. So
Yeah, but would you ever move there?
if they give me free land, they have enough land to give out free land 100 times over to every citizen.
Yes.
And still have room to spare. If you give out free land and you say, if you build a house on this, that it's yours to keep. Yeah.
But again, the conditions are harsh. And Rafa says hello, so hello, Rafa.
Oh, hi. Hello, Mr. Rafa.
Once again.
Okay, let's go into the next one. Oh, and this one was a little crazy. This one wasn't on my morning episode, and this is a liberal man saying, is it time to declare war on the U.S.?
Man is debatable.
And this is a British...
God. Another one that looks like a potato. We were talking earlier how a lot of them look like potatoes.
Well, can he get it? Is he going to make out with the camera? What's going on here? He's so close to it.
And again with the weird glasses.
The time has come for the UK and the EU to declare a state of war with the United States of America. Ever since the fascist takeover by Donald Trump, Doge, and Elon Musk, America now represents a serious threat to democracy across the world, especially in the Western world. And by betraying Ukraine, Zelensky, and the EU and leaving us at the mercy of Vladimir Putin, we have no choice now but to fight for freedom and democracy for all people all around the world. Now, of course, this is not a fight that's going to be easy to win. America is a very powerful country, but I will be the first to volunteer to fight for that cause. To fight that war,
they're in trouble now. He's going to fight for them.
Beaches of New York or the shores of the River Thames. We must fight fascism wherever we see it, as nations, and stand as one, whether that's us without America in NATO fighting Donald Trump's armies. Whether that's...
Pause it.
What are
we got to stand with NATO? The U.S. supplies all the weapons for NATO, which they collect a tax for, which the NATO countries don't necessarily pay, yet they still provide it to keep those countries in debt. Europe almost has no weapons right now, and they need the U.S. to supply more weapons. They're trying to engage with a further war with Ukraine, which will engage the Russian conflict with the EU. Right now, they're having trouble doing that because the population does not agree with the governments. This is why the governments in the EU and the UK want Russia to cut off their gas and their oil, so then the people start to starve, freeze, and die, and then they can blame the Russians and start a bigger war. Right now, the Russians aren't going to turn off the oil, and they know if they do that the EU is going to use that as propaganda to turn the EU people against them and start a broader war. So I do not want to see a war. I'm anti-war, whether it's Russia, Ukraine, whether it's Israel or anything else. Mm-hmm. And if there is a war happening, other countries just need to stay out of it, especially if it's regional. So,
do you think he kind of looks like an AI? Because he's moving weird.
No.
He's too ugly to be AI, but still.
Fighting Vladimir Putin. if we don't take action now and stand for our values, stand for our liberal left-wing values, then I believe they will be under threat and possibly destroyed forever. Now, obviously, America is a nuclear-armed country, and that poses a serious challenge. But sometimes you have to stand up and fight for what you believe in, no matter what the challenge is or what the consequences might be. Diplomatically, this will be very difficult, given our long-standing allyship with the United States. But sometimes allies do turn on each other, and times change. And you have to stand up for your values, no matter what.
That's crazy, and that he's obviously from the UK with his accent, and the UK just signed a deal where they're going to be subservient to the United States with this trade deal.
But that's fascism.
Oh,
It's funny that he thinks the U.S. is going to come nuke him.
and I don't
for
know who
his
he thinks is
opinions.
going to fight this battle because it's all Muslims within that country. If they start fighting that war, the Muslims
it.
are going to completely take over the UK, and they're almost there. It says, I just wanted to kind of bring this up. Actually, this is a good talking point. A lot of people don't know. When you start investigating revolutions and like that, it doesn't take 50% of the population or even a big percentage. It only takes 5 to 8%. And right now in the UK, the Muslim population is at 8%. So to think you need a big population for a revolution, no, it's actually a small fringe minority that can cause a revolution in a country.
And it's also like interesting to think, and I think, and Rafa had a comment that it was like values. It's funny what they call their degeneracy, and now they're starting to talk about values, which is kind of what we've been saying, where they're trying to shift it towards a more religion-y based kind of speech, where it's like, oh, our values and restoring our freedoms and blah blah blah. They're starting to sound like the right wing.
Yeah.
But they don't realize it. They don't realize how ridiculous they sound as well. Like what we've been saying this past few days, a lot of these like lefty lunatic liberals keep sounding like they're not in connection with the real world. They keep they're not in reality anymore.
The right was really, they weren't in power, so they weren't connected with the government. So that in debates and things, they went back to traditional Christian values and really flushed that out and related that to how it relates to politics. And it was a very good format. But now that they're in power, I was watching a Tim Pool debate today.
Oh, yeah.
What's the guy who was debating? I wrote his name
Adam
down here.
Conover.
Oh, Adam Conover. And Tim Pool got destroyed for the first hour and actually said he was against free speech.
So yeah,
because
somehow he ended up twisting himself into that.
He's aligning with the government that's in power, forgetting the non-moving moral foundation that should drive his political decisions. He did come back on the second half of the debate, thank God, because he looked like a fool in the first half, and he kind of forgot about his first principles. But now that the right's coming into power, they're kind of moving away from that moral foundation that they really had flushed out and starting to chase power, really.
Yeah, which is what always happens whenever people get into power.
But I still people just need to be aware and call it out when they see it, and hopefully the right comes back into line because they're not off the rails yet.
No.
But I have seen a lot of liberal debaters getting better and better at debate because they're not when your ideology isn't in power. Sometimes it's easier to debate because you can point out things that the other side's doing.
Yeah, which is what the right has been doing for the past
10 years.
10 years. I was going to say 9 years. Rafa says, today I had a meeting on Zoom and some dude has they, them, called him he anyway. And that's an easy way to fight. That's kind of what I always tell people. Like, just behave yourself, comport yourself in the world with the truth. Like, it's not hard. And if you get called out, just say, oh, sorry, I'm just following the truth.
And it's a shame.
Reality.
I mean, you don't live right now. If you live in the States, it's easy to address that situation because they're not allowed to use pronouns anymore. And if they do, you don't have to have that compelled speech. But in a lot of other countries, compelled speech is written into law, like in Canada, like in the UK. I know in Canada, I knew a police officer that misgendered a trans person that was a crazy rollerblader person that would go around and say, stop, and really direct traffic, which is completely illegal on her rollerblades all day. That's all she would do. And the cops tried to arrest her and tell her to stop, and they used the wrong pronouns.
But
and it was $25,000 lawsuit they had.
So was it a man dressed as a woman?
Yeah, it's a man dressed in a miniskirt with rollerblades that looks like a man.
Like, I've seen it.
Yeah.
It's him.
Oh.
And it is like one thing I did, for example, as an actor of rebellion, when I was working at one of the schools, the email I had to use the previous person had the land acknowledgement, so we acknowledge that we are on stolen land, essentially, colonialism, etc. And then they had like she, her pronouns. So I just deleted all of that and just left my name normal, and then the school's phone number, and then the email. But it's those little things that just kind of reflect back what you're actually trying to say or where you actually try to stand.
They're not little things because
they make a big difference.
They do have a roadmap where they want to go with everything, and one little thing leads to another little thing, leads to another little thing, and they have an agenda. And these things that seem like little things aren't, because when you get compelled speech codified into law, it is huge. When you get these land acknowledgements codified into law, things change on a legal aspect, with a legal aspect. And hate speech as well, when they get that codified into the law, you no longer have speech. We just seen what happened in South Africa. I talked about it yesterday. They're saying if you talk about the things that are happening in South Africa, that's hate speech, and we're going to prosecute you under treason laws. And treason laws are usually executed by death.
By ending lives.
Okay.
And I'm also, like, for example, when I see friends on social media and they have their little pronouns in their bio, like she, her, and he, him, almost none of them have like they, them. They're just putting it there because it either gives them the option or someone told them to put them there. I just kind of ask them, like, why? Like, what's the point? And they're like, oh, I don't know. It just gave me the option. I don't know. It's just so it's there. And I was like, then remove it. Everybody knows you're a girl or everybody knows you're a boy. There's no reason for you to be using it. And people at work as well, like their jobs trying to get them to acknowledge or put their pronouns in their emails and stuff like that. And they can just say no, or they can just say, well, people can call me whatever. And then if they're wrong, I'll correct them.
But they can't say that.
Some people
in
can.
certain countries.
But for example, I have a friend that worked for the government in Canada, for a like tiny sector of the government, and she told them like, hey, I'm not comfortable putting that in my email, and they were like, okay, if you're not comfortable, it's okay.
Yeah, but if somebody actually calls her out on it, it could be a major lawsuit in Canada.
It might
so
be.
It's the fact that the people around her already know because I know who you're talking about as well. She already adopts the ideology in general, especially at work. So they're going to let her slide on something like that. But if somebody does call her out, then it's a major lawsuit against the company
or
itself.
at least issues.
Okay, let's go into Mission Impossible, and this was your big story for your own live.
You switched around the stories. So, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, set for China release on May 30 as trade tensions ease.
That was the next story, wasn't it?
No.
What was the next story?
Elbows up.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
It went Qatar, then Disney,
I have them here, and they
James
can
Earl
see
Jones, and then Mission Impossible, and then Final Destination Bloodlines. But we skipped the Mission Impossible. It doesn't really matter because we've talked about it a lot. But why don't we?
Yeah, we skipped the Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
So the one after the one we were doing just now was the Canadian campers.
Okay. Do you want to talk about this?
Sure.
Okay, go ahead. I got to sit differently too. My back's been hurting, so I'm going to lay back.
So I mean, it does.
I had to bring the chair up so it wasn't so short.
Okay. I don't know. What do you want me to say about this?
What are your thoughts on it? It's coming out tomorrow. We're going to go see it tomorrow.
Well, this is about China.
I'm pretty excited. I talked about this this morning.
But I forgot.
So because trade tensions between the U.S. and China are easing, they're letting in this movie. But again, they only let in 27 movies a year. This happens to be one of them. So this really helps the box office of a movie like this. This movie will do very well in China. It needs to do well in China because it's a 3-hour movie, so they can play it less times in every cinema they're in.
Yeah. And I mean, just in general, it's good to see kind of that things like this will probably still get in good enough or like a good box office, especially this one because it's the last one, even though they haven't said that it's the final one in the saga. They're just saying it's Tom Cruise's last one. And as I said in Spanish, I just recommend to them to end it for a little bit and then in a bit more years, let enough nostalgia gather up and then release a new one, not with a woman, but with another guy in it.
Okay, let's go into the story that we were going to go to, and that's Canadian campers.
So Canadian campers going elbows up this summer amid U.S. trade war. If you don't know what elbows up means, so Mark Carney had this whole, his main campaign, slogan was elbows up, which is something that people do in hockey. I know nothing about hockey, but a lot of people started making fun of him because once he went into talks with Trump and how he behaved himself during that whole meeting. His elbows were definitely down and he was cowering like a small child. So now the fact that they're still trying to use this whole rhetoric about elbows up and going back towards...
And the elbows up was specifically done towards tariffs, and he's quietly lowered all the tariffs on the U.S. They're not saying it publicly, but privately the information is leaked out that all tariffs virtually are put down on the U.S. because the Canadian economy is so fragile, it will collapse if they keep the tariffs up. That's number one. And number two, they haven't told the people, so the people are still brainwashed by this campaign that he had. Elbows up. We need to go against the United States. Well, the government's no longer going against the United States. They're capitulating to everything, basically begging and waiting for a trade deal.
So yes, what are
and this is why they just went on vacation. They refused to release a your
budget?
Yeah, they refused to release their budget. And the reason they're refusing to release their budget is if they release a budget and now it's going to be completely skewed and people are going to know Canada is going to collapse because it's going to have to revolve around the trade deal that with the U.S., which they don't have. They're hoping the U.S. Trade deal is going to end and then they can put out their budget. Because if they put it out now, the people are going to revolt.
So what's happening with campers? So
they're not going to the U.S. This is like...
well, because
they're staying in Canada.
I want to make fun of campers.
Why?
Because they annoy me.
You said you wanted to open a camp one day.
For kids.
That's campers.
So yeah, apparently some of their plans have been affected by the trade war, and Canadians always love to make themselves miserable over being, the ugly duckling compared to the U.S.
Okay,
so they're always complaining.
That doesn't explain it, though.
I know, but...
Okay, so basically Canadians, what was fed to Canadians, and especially older Canadians, by Mark Carney, is don't travel to the United States. We got to hurt the United States. So now that it's starting to become spring and summertime, this is when a lot of Canadians usually go down to the States. They're saying they're going to camp in Canada now and things like this.
Yes.
Okay, let's go into the next one.
Carney?
Yep, Mark Carney. And he's doing what Trump did, which was Trump is like signing executive orders and making a big show of things, saying, I've done something.
Right. Yeah.
That's not how Canada works. Canada doesn't work by executive order. So what he's actually doing here is just a fraudulent piece of paper for show and for the media. What he's signing actually doesn't do anything. They're on vacation right now.
For Parliament.
So anything he wants to do, he has to put through Parliament.
Yes.
And they have to vote on it. Then it has to be signed by Parliament. So he just wants to look like he's doing something. He likes to have the media film him and say, this is what I did, when he didn't actually do. It's not actually legal. He didn't actually do it yet.
I mean, it might be like a proposal, but they don't say proposal. They just say, oh, it's bill, blah, blah, blah.
Well, and he can't even do anything like this when Parliament's back because he doesn't have a majority government yet. They flipped another thing today. Another seat today. So they need 172 seats in order to do whatever they want. They had 169. Then a week later, they had 170. Then 171. Yeah, because they won one seat by one vote.
Yeah, they keep discovering these one votes that somehow mysteriously got not counted.
I think I had a clip of an Asian man talking about this. Yeah.
Okay, well, let me find it. You talk.
Okay.
So you're on camera.
There's a bald Asian guy talking about the seat that was just flipped. He's really knowledgeable when it comes to Canadian politics.
Okay, set it up while I find it. So we're not just both staring at our computers.
Okay.
Now you didn't.
Okay, just leave it then.
Okay.
You can continue to talk. I'm going to go find it because I know you're lying.
I'm not lying. But yes, I mean, Canadians will continue to accept whatever the government tells them because they've been trained to do so, like a Pavlovian dog. So essentially, the government says, oh, yes, we're doing this, and people just applaud like seals. But they never actually are interested in what's actually happening. And for the longest time, I saw these reactions in Canada, and I don't think it's going to change. I don't think even most of them realize that those two seats have been flipped within, 3 weeks now of the election, because it was on April 20-something, 21st, I think, or 28th. April 28th were the elections, and just now they're finding all these mysterious votes. And then it's coming out also that Elections Canada was not sending out the proper mail-in ballots to some people, where some of those votes could have gone the other way and counted for the other side. But now
Okay.
they're not going to count those.
You're right. I didn't bookmark it.
See?
My bad.
I'm always right.
Okay, let's go into the next story here. And that's
Can we talk about this?
No, well,
Oh, we moved it.
I moved that
Yeah.
one.
Because it's a little too spicy for YouTube.
Let's
Kash
go into
Patel?
Cash Patel. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's coming from Benny Johnson. If you don't follow him, he's a good source for U.S. news.
And we played this clip on my morning show, but we'll
Yes.
play it again just so if anybody did miss it. But this is good. He's in order to drain the swamp. A lot of legal scholars and lawyers were actually talking about how do you do it, and you need to decentralize the consolidated power in Washington. Washington D.C. is a special district, which it shouldn't actually be. So they need to start moving all these agencies like the FBI, CIA, things like this, out of Washington, so they don't all collude together in this big political agenda with the NGOs, with USAID, and all the funding.
But now that, we have telephones and computers, can't they do collusion, over the internet?
They can, but it's a lot harder. So especially when people can monitor them and there'll be a paper trail. There's not much of a paper trail when you're all right there. And there's a lot more pressure applied on you directly from your higher ups.
Okay.
So,
Look, the FBI is 38,000 when we're fully manned, which we're not. In the National Capital Region, in the 50-mile radius around Washington, D.C., there were 11,000 FBI employees. That's like a third of the workforce. A third of the crime doesn't happen here. So we're taking 1,500 of those folks and moving them out. Every state's getting a plus up. And I think when we do things like that, we inspire folks in America to become intel analysts and agents and say, we want to go work at the FBI because we want to go fight violent crime and we want to get sent out into the country to do it. And that's what we're doing. In the next 3, 6, 9 months, we're going to do that hard. And, I didn't know that I was going to do this, but I'm going to announce it on your show anyway. This FBI is leaving the Hoover building because this building is unsafe for our workforce, and we want the workforce.
You just gave up a big nugget there.
But we want the American men and women to know, if you're going to come work at the premier law enforcement agency in the world, we're going to give you a building that's commensurate with that. And that's not this place. Look.
okay. And I think what they're doing here is actually really good, and it will. They're trying to rebrand the FBI to kind of what it used to be, not what it's become. So the FBI has been turned against the American people. If you were a MAGA supporter in the United States or a Trump supporter, the Biden administration literally labeled you a terrorist. So that was crazy.
Correct.
And they also did that to parents that went to school board meetings as well.
Yes.
So that was crazy.
Especially religious ones that were against the ideology.
Okay, let's go into the audio. This was the headline story that I found later on. So it's going to play through the audio. This is when Joe Biden had the documents in his garage in his Corvette, and they questioned him about it. He said he was guilty. The FBI said he was guilty of the crime, but he wasn't competent to stand trial.
Yep.
So they didn't prosecute. But in the interview, he sounds somewhat he sounded competent to me, although his timeline was a little mixed up. I think he should have been prosecuted, but...
Because according to Benny Johnson, apparently he forgets names, dates, and stumbles through every single answer. That's what Benny Johnson
And it's
said.
quite a long clip, but I'm going to play it all just so you can hear it. It's kind of muffled at the beginning, but the audio gets better as the clip goes on.
Okay.
So during this time, we were living in Chambers Road, and there were documents related to the Penn Biden Center or the Biden or the cancer booster shot or your book. Where did you keep papers that related to those things that you were actively working on?
Well, I don't know. This is what, 2017, 18, that area?
Yes, sir.
Remember, in this time frame, my son is either been deployed or is dying.
And he's talking about his other son, and that's
And,
the wrong dates. So
And so it was, and by the way, there were still a lot of people at the time when I got out of the Senate that were encouraging me to run in this period, except the president. I'm not. That's not a mean thing to say. I mean, he just thought that she had a better shot of winning the presidency than I did, and so I hadn't at this point, even though I'm at Penn, I hadn't walked away from the idea that I might run for office again. If I ran again, I'd be running for president, and so what was happening though. What month did Bo die? May 30th, 2015. 2015.
Yeah, he's constantly lying about the sun,
It's 2015.
which is the crazy
Or
thing.
forget.
I'm not sure the months are, but I think it was.
Yeah.
That's right, Mr. President.
And what's happened
Okay, we can just
in
stop
the
it there.
meantime,
But yeah, if you do want to see the audio in depth, you can go on YouTube or X. That's where I found
Yeah,
it.
Benny
So
Johnson has it.
what do you think? What do you think about Biden in general? He tried to do his tour recently to reframe his image and stuff and try to save his legacy,
It's
but
just sad.
it completely went back, kind of backfired on him.
Yeah, and it's just sad.
Because Trump is showing how easy it was to fix all these things. He said, well, they couldn't fix the illegal immigration. They needed these bills in Congress, blah, blah. Trump came in right away, gave an executive order, shut it down. Boom.
I mean, it just. He does sound like he's completely muffled, confused, and he sounds like any sad old person.
Okay, yeah, but that being said, hey, girl, shh. Okay, just leave her. That being said, if he was incompetent to stand trial for the documents, he's definitely incompetent. He's definitely incompetent. I got her. Keep talking.
So, he can talk, but in my opinion, he sounds like any older person that's, really going through it towards the end. So, I don't know. I would say I would agree with the prosecutors or the AG saying that he didn't sound competent.
Okay, well, I have no problem if they want to go that way, but if they want to go that way,
But don't make him president.
No, that's not what
Don't
I'm going to
make him
say. What
run.
I'm going to say is if you're going to go that way and say he's incompetent, and this was before he was out of office, this is like 2 years before he's out of office, then how does any of the pardons that he signed legitimate? He's
Yeah,
not
that too.
competent to stand trial, so none of the pardons he signed with an auto pen, he didn't even sign them himself, those should be null and void. Therefore, Fauci should be prosecuted.
And nothing he did after somebody declared him incompetent to stand a trial should even be considered legitimate.
Yeah.
Because if you're not competent to stand trial, you're not competent to do anything else.
You can't have it both ways, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
But will anything ever be done? No.
And the Supreme Court ruled against the people today and ruled against Donald Trump.
And Rafa says, poor creepy Uncle Joe. And it is kind of a weird feeling sometimes I get, because it is like he's old and they're clearly, mistreating him, but at the same time he's a disgusting man that did disgusting things for the longest time.
Yeah,
and incredibly corrupt. So some of me is like,
I got no sympathy for it. And a lot of people are forgetting that
female
period.
brain turns on.
A lot of people are forgetting what happened in that time period in Canada during the jibby jab phase, the
Yes.
authoritarianness of that government, and the things they secretly implemented that are still implemented to this day. The American government did a lot of crazy things during that time period as well. And Joe Biden was responsible for a lot of it because he allowed himself to be puppeteered.
Well, the family dealings and the Ukraine thing and the laundering of stuff. Yes.
So let's go into the Supreme Court ruling today.
So Supreme Court rules against Trump administration in Alien Enemies Act case. The Supreme Court granted a request by Venezuelan nationals seeking to block their removal from the United States under the Alien Enemies Act. President Donald Trump said the court won't allow us to get criminals out of our country. The court barred the removal of the men who the Trump administration alleges are members of Tren de Aragua, pending a new decision from a lower court.
Okay, yeah, and this is kind of a good news, bad news situation because he's having trouble actually deporting people because there's a lot of reasons for that, but mainly the Supreme Court's been blocking them.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, Trump did suspend the asylum system, leaving immigrants to face an uncertain future. That's the other part of the story. What do I mean by that? New immigrants trying to claim asylum coming into the country, just leave her, coming into the country won't be able to claim asylum anymore. So he's completely stopped the flow of immigrants. He's just have to find a way to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he's making it a very unfriendly environment, and Canada is welcoming them, and Canada is right there. So Potentially, they'll leave on their own, and he is offering them free plane tickets plus $1,000 signing bonus or leaving bonus if they leave the country.
Apparently, it was a 7-2 decision. The court said the Trump administration had not given the detainees enough time or adequate resources to challenge their deportations. Under these circumstances, notice roughly 24 hours before removal, devoid of information about how to exercise due process rights to contest that removal, surely does not pass muster.
Yeah, I was looking into a specific case today about this, and you get like 7 or 8 different times you can go through the court system, 7 or 8 different hearings, and if you have 11 million illegal immigrants and everyone's going to be entitled to 7 or 8 hearings, there needs to be a more expedient process, meaning you need 1 or 2 hearings, and they need to make a ruling fairly quickly. All these people did come into the country illegally initially, so there should be a way to speed up this process. They've intentionally elongated the process, so it'd be too difficult for governments to actually get them out.
Yes.
That being said, again, I keep saying it, but America lets in more legal immigrants than any other country by a magnitude of order.
Yeah.
So,
and also illegal. Not anymore, but for the longest time.
okay, let's go into what's the next story. Mark Carney.
Yes. So elbows up, Mark Carney told everyone, yet in the middle of the 37-day election campaign, he quietly dropped retaliatory tariffs to nearly zero without telling anyone, knowing it would only become public after the election was over, so May 7th. Apparently, Canada's new tariffs on U.S. dropped to nearly zero with exemptions, according to Oxford Economics. This is from May 15th, so yesterday.
Yeah, and they ran on a hard tariff, saying tariff for tariff. We're going to...
Elbows up.
Elbows up. This is what they ran on. And I know we talked about this story earlier, but I just wanted to show some evidence that there are no more tariffs or virtually no tariffs on America right now. But America still has tariffs on Canada. So his whole way to get in office was an absolute lie, and it worked.
And we knew he was going to lie.
Okay, do you want to talk about the South African thing now with Katie Hopkins and Lauren Southern? I just wanted to recommend 2 documentaries that are currently out on YouTube. One was re-released by Rebel News, and the other one's been on YouTube for a long time. They were both released around 2018, because this is when this issue was really hot.
For a while.
Yeah, this issue is only coming back to light because of President Trump, Elon Musk, and a few other prominent figures are talking about it again, and the death toll has just gone through the roof now. But there's this situation in South Africa with the farmers, there's well over a decade of evidence, eyewitness testimony, video testimony. In police stations, there's video cameras from the police stations of crazy things that black police officers were doing to these farmers as well. There's these 2 full-length documentaries where they go throughout the country, interview politicians, interview the farmers on the ground. You name it, they kind of have it in here. Last night we showed eyewitness testimony on Rumble of a girl that was taken advantage of by 6 guys, and her husband was ended, and it was pretty tragic, but a lot of people didn't know about this. So especially progressives on the left are trying to build this narrative that this never happened. This is a massive losing situation for them, because there's a decade of evidence of how it did happen in every way, shape, or form. So if they want to continuing saying this isn't happening, they're going to die on that hill, and a lot less people are going to support them.
So Rafa's asking, who do you think was pulling his strings? And I don't know if he means Joe Biden or Mark Carney, but
Joe Biden. Okay. He's talking about, well, who do you think? Definitely
his wife, probably, for starters.
Well, I think he had, because Joe Biden was known to be very, very corrupt. So I think he was taking bribes on a constant basis. So there wasn't one person pulling his strings. A lot of the bribes came into effect, but I think the globalists in general were the ones pulling the majority of the strings, but then he would have other puppet masters through the bribes he was taking that he had to show allegiance to, like China, things like that.
And the deep state.
Yeah, but he was basically transitioning the United States out of power to usher in China, is the way I had seen it at the time. It was a controlled collapse of the United States. Now that Trump's in there, he's having to take radical action in order to try to save the country. I'm really hoping they don't go to digital currency and digital ID, but we'll see what happens.
And he also says, Rafa says, Lauren Southern is awesome. Wish she was as active as in 2017. Well, she took some wrong turns. Let's just put it that way. I still really like her, and I respect all the work she did do when she was heavily involved and heavily documenting things and going out in the field and doing, like, for example, farmlands, and the other documentary about the mass grave hoax in Canada.
She had a couple of scandals. One was,
Yes.
I don't know if you know who the influencer Destiny is, but he's a crazy leftist debater, and he's just unconscionable. The guy is just cringe, and she had an affair with him.
Apparently,
Yeah.
allegedly.
Yeah. Well, and so did Nick Fuentes, which is even more crazy of a scandal.
Allegedly.
There's videotape of it released by Destiny, and Destiny confirmed that he had relations with these people.
Yeah.
Destiny was single-handedly taking out these people.
And he's married too.
Well, no, he's not.
Not anymore?
He hasn't been married. He was a cock, and she left her for somebody for a sneako, I think it was.
I don't follow stupid internet drama, but I was more talking about her getting married and then divorcing.
She's a great journalist, though.
Yes,
But
if she focused on not her personal life, I think she could come back stronger.
Well, no, and then she was wrapped up in the scandal with Tenant Media and stuff like
Yes,
that as well.
that too.
So that kind of happened, and then there was a scandal with the man she married from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Was she part of the deep state that intentionally married her? Blah blah blah.
That's
So
what I meant.
it's just like scandal after scandal. Plus, she has quite the drinking problem. Maybe that's why she's making a series of bad decisions.
You can't put it, like, impress people, not impress people. You can't put that on people if they haven't said it themselves.
She was on Tim Pool saying it and doing
Oh, she
it.
did. She said she has a problem?
She was on Tim Pool drinking her ass off, blackout drunk almost.
Yes, but we
Okay.
don't know the
Anyway,
circumstances.
she's a good journalist, but the amount of scandals that she was in kind of took some of her credibility, and she's not in the limelight. If it was just based upon her work, she's fantastic.
Yes, when you're a journalist, you don't want to become the story, essentially.
Yeah.
That's
But
the last
also,
thing you
people
want.
were really motivated because she was touching a lot of third rails to kind of take her out.
Yes. Yeah, so maybe it was intentional. But then also this one, Plasmoord, I don't know how to say that because I think it's Afrikaans, but it's called The Ending Fields, but you can see there the actual title, and it's by Katie Hopkins, and I also love Katie Hopkins. She is kind of like a journalist, award-winning documentary maker.
And a
columnist,
comedian.
Kind of comedian, but she started out more as a journalist, and she got kind of sacked from the BBC and from all the other formal jobs she was having.
I started watching this today, and because I had previously watched Lauren Southern's. It's a very well produced documentary. The issue is the naming of it. Nobody can say the name of it, and then the second part of the name
you can't say on YouTube.
you can't say on YouTube.
But
so
it has been a news site from Canada.
So a lot of independent media now are bringing up this decades
Evidence.
mountain of evidence that they have. That's free for anybody to kind of bring up, but the independent media is kind of strategically bringing it up and bringing it to light.
And I think with Katie Hopkins, like, she is, for example, the woman that I would like to be when I grow up. She is just really good at saying things as they are and not caring and going into situations and things where she knows probably what will happen, but she'll still say it anyways, and she has no filter at all. And that's kind of what makes her more a comedian, but she's not a comedian. She's a journalist, and she was a very
She's done stand-up as well. She said she did.
Yes, but that's not her main thing. She was a very serious journalist that got excommunicated from all of the mainstream media.
Yeah, but when she was doing the podcast thing, she didn't bring up the fact that she was a journalist. She actually advertised herself as a comedian.
Well, yes, because now she's had to pivot. But it wasn't fair.
Okay, let's go into let's skip the protesters' traffic because I already Associated Deputy AG.
The Associate Deputy.
Oh, maybe save that one for
Are
Rumble.
you in BLE? Okay.
Just go into the next story. I'm going to cut and paste that so I don't forget about it.
Okay.
Oh,
Carla?
we're almost there.
Yes.
So, okay. What's the next one? Story. Why don't we go to Rumble now?
We're
Because
all over the place.
all these stories are a little bit too touchy for YouTube.
Yes. So we're heading over to RUMBLE. Thank you to everybody that's over here right now. If you haven't liked or subscribed to the channel, please do so. We hate asking, but it always helps since this is the small channel that we're trying to build up again. Not again, just in general.
Yeah.
So we'll see you over
at
on
Rumble.
RUMBLE.
Okay.
Hold on. I haven't even ended it. Okay. So